Yes, I could go to the store and get them, but I'm not doing that today. Instead, I'm making homemade potato chips with a bacon and caramelized onion dip. This is going to be a tasty one. Trust me on that. We're going to be making two kinds of potato chips, regular salted and barbecue. But first, we've got to get our dip made. And we're going to be starting with a red onion that we're going to slice up, and we're going to caramelize that in some bacon fat. So let's just get this sliced up. This is about half of a medium red onion here. This is what I'm looking for. Now we're going to head over to the stove and we're going to cook up some bacon first. This is just regular thick cut bacon that I'm using. I've cut the strips in half so they're a little bit easier to cook in here. And I am going to be cooking these beyond what I normally would to AFS or acceptable floppy state because I want them a little firmer when we're going to be chopping them up to go into this dip. We're also going to reserve some of this bacon fat in the pan, and we're going to use that to caramelize our red onion. Now I would recommend in this not using a flavored bacon, unless it's something like maybe a black pepper bacon or something like that. But I wouldn't use like a brown sugar bacon in this because you're going to then impart that brown sugar flavor into an onion dip. And we're already going to get good sweetness from the red onion we're using. So this is just regular bacon, no flavoring at all. And we should have just enough of the bacon fat remaining in here. If for some reason there's not enough fat remaining when you do this, you could add maybe half a tablespoon of butter in here. All right, I'm going to finish these up and then we'll move on to caramelizing our red onions. All right, it's time to get our red onion into the pan, and you want this on a lower heat. We don't want this hot. This is going to take a while to caramelize these. You want to break them up. We're just starting to get some of the liquid out of the onions. That's what all this bubbling is with the oil. The liquid's being released from this red onion. I'm all mixed up in the bacon fat. Trying to move them around so that they're all sort of in contact with the pan. Okay, I'm going to turn my heat down just above low, and we're going to let these go, stirring them occasionally until we start to get that beautiful caramelization on them. So this is about 15 minutes in. There were a couple larger pieces that I removed. They just weren't going to cook down as well as these, and I didn't want these to get over caramelized, so we're down to the pieces that are going to be perfect. But we've still got probably, I don't know, another 5 to 10 minutes to go. Just keeping it on a low heat now. All right, these are looking good. I'm going to take these off, drain them on a paper towel, and in a few minutes, once they cool down, we're going to start making this dip. All right, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to break this bacon down just by chopping it up. It needs to be smaller pieces, doesn't have to be diced or anything like that. Now we're not done chopping this, but before we go any further, we're just going to add our onions to the mix because they need to be chopped up too. We just want to make it so we don't have any huge chunks in this dip. And that looks good, so let's make this dip. So we're starting with sort of the base that you would use in almost every sort of dip like this. This is a cup of sour cream. To this we're adding a 1/4 teaspoon of kosher salt, 1/8 teaspoon of ground black pepper, 1/8 teaspoon of garlic powder. We're going to add our bacon and onion mix, and we're adding 1/2 cup of mayonnaise. And we are just going to mix this up. Now, if you have other favorite ingredients you like to put into a dip, go ahead. We'll adjust this one for flavor after it's kind of set for a while in the refrigerator. Make sure you scrape your sides down, get everybody in there. Let's take a quick little taste with a fresh spoon. Ooh, that's really good. Even this soon, those caramelized onions are already starting to release those flavors in there, those oils. So this is going to be good when it sits for probably 2 or 3 hours before we actually fry up our potato chips. All right, I'm going to put a cover on this, get it in the refrigerator, let it chill for a few hours, and I'll see you back here in a bit when we fry up some potato chips. So before we slice up our potatoes for frying, I want to make the barbecue spice mixture, which is going to make our barbecue potato chips. We're going to start with a tablespoon of chili powder, a tablespoon of paprika, half a tablespoon of brown sugar, half a tablespoon of garlic powder, half a tablespoon of onion powder, a half a teaspoon of cayenne pepper, a half a teaspoon of ground cumin, a half a teaspoon of ground black pepper. I ran out of little dishes for my spices, so I had to use a shot glass for the pepper. And a half a teaspoon of ground mustard. Gonna give this a good mix. Make sure that that brown sugar gets broken up and mixed in. If you want this really mixed, you could put this in a spice grinder and just hit it for a couple seconds. All right, let's take a little taste and see if we need to adjust any of our seasonings. That's pretty good. I actually think it needs a little more sweetness, so I'm gonna add a little more brown sugar. I think about another teaspoon should do it. Let's mix this in. Again, make sure that that brown sugar mixes up well. If you don't like brown sugar, you can use white sugar with this. I just prefer brown sugar. All right, let's take another taste. I like that. A little more sweetness in it. All right, this is ready. Let's move on to the potatoes. So what I'm working with are some small russet potatoes. You can use larger potatoes, medium size, anything. I have 6 of them peeled here. I don't know if I'll use them all or we'll fry them all up. But I'm just gonna be using this mandolin here. This is a very inexpensive mandolin. You can spend hundreds of dollars on it. This was about $25. And I just adjusted the blade so I can get the thinnest potatoes possible. If you've never used a mandolin, be careful. There is a guide for this to hold the potatoes after they get going. Don't get your fingers down near the blade. The first few slices will probably be discarded. And as you can see, they're dropping into a bowl of water. It's very cold water. This will help keep them from turning brown or gray before we fry them. As I'm getting closer to the blade, I'm gonna switch to the little holder. And this one at the end is going to be too small, so we're not going to use that piece. I'm going to go ahead and slice the rest of these, and then we'll move on to drying them. All right, we're going to start transferring our potato chips to a paper towel lined tray here. Get as much of the water off as possible. And just spread them out as best as you can. Just try and spread them out, and then we're going to pat them down with paper towels on top. Go ahead and move them around. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and transfer these to a plate, and then we're gonna check our oil and see how close we are to frying time. Okay, our oil's getting close to temperature. We're gonna be frying these potato chips today at 325. So we're almost there as soon as we hit the red mark. All right, our oil's at temp, and we're gonna start with very small batches here. We want these to be golden brown and crispy. It can take 3, 4, 5 minutes sometimes. Just depends on how thick the chips are. These were fairly thin. Just gonna kind of flip these around a little bit. See, we're starting to get some golden brown in there. You wanna work in small batches. So you can see that color on this one. This is about what we're looking for. Turn our oil down just a little bit. You wanna try and keep it right around 325. All right, so this batch is coming out using our slotted spoon, and it's gonna go into a paper towel lined bowl. Drain off some of the excess oil. This is canola oil that I'm using here. A couple inches deep in this pan. Now we're gonna get some more chips in here. Go for a few more this time. And as you're working in small batches here, if some of them get done before others, go ahead and move those out into the paper towel lined bowl and let the others finish up. And as you get more comfortable with it, you can start adding more. You just don't want to crowd the pan. You don't want to fill it too full so that you get a lot of extra moisture in there and boil it over. That's not a good thing to do. So maintain your temperature right around 325. Some other people do it at a higher temperature. 325 seems to be a good temperature for these though. All right, I'm gonna add another batch here. All right, I'm gonna keep frying these up. I'll bring you back when it's time to season them. So while these are still warm and have a little bit of that oil on them while they're drying, go ahead and hit them with some salt in that paper towel lined bowl. And I've transferred some of these chips now into another bowl because we're gonna start adding our barbecue potato chip seasoning to them. First thing I wanna do is give them just one more little hit of salt. And now I'm gonna take a sprinkling of the seasoning. Maybe a little more seasoning in here. Really, you just go as heavy as you want. Whatever sort of flavor you like. You go ahead and add a little more to this. And we have our regular ones ready, so it's time to taste. Yeah, there's nothing fancy about this that we made tonight. It is potato chips and dip, but let me tell you, when you make it from scratch yourself, homemade, you know what's going into it. You know what kind of oil, you know what kind of seasonings, you know that there are no preservatives. You're making a batch and you're eating it right then. You're flavoring it any way you want, and you're gonna enjoy it more than you would a store-bought chip. All right, first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take a taste of just the regular chip. All it has is some of that salt on it that we added. No dip yet. Let's see. That is honestly better than any chip I've ever had. And it's not because I'm a chef or anything with potato chips. It's just that it's freshly made. It's right out of the oil. It's sitting right here in front of me. It's still warm. It has the salt on it that's adhering to it. It's got a little bit of that oil coating the surface still. The crunch to it is perfect. I don't know if you can hear that. Listen when I bite. It is just so good. Now, before I taste the dip, I want to taste the barbecue potato chips on their own. You can see the barbecue coating on here, the seasonings all over this. And this is one of those things where you can add as much as you want. If you like a really spicy barbecue chip, you can add more chili powder. This is sort of a middle-of-the-road barbecue spice seasoning on this. So let's see. Sweet, a little spicy with that heat. It's that sweetness that really reminds me of the barbecue potato chips that I loved, especially growing up from the bag, except these taste 10 times better. I'm gonna have another one. Hold on. I cannot emphasize enough how wonderful it tastes because these are fresh. Now, it's time for some of that bacon and caramelized onion dip. Here we go. That's good dip. Little pieces of onion in it, little pieces of bacon on a fresh potato chip. I gotta tell you, it does not get much better than this. Yes, this takes more work than just going down to the store and buying it, but man, if you tasted this right now, you would understand why once in a while doing something like this is such a treat. It's like treating yourself to something that tastes like something you're not going to get anywhere else because you made it yourself with your hands in your kitchen with the freshest ingredients. And even though I'm not sure how the barbecue flavor will go with the onion, I'm going to give it a try. Let's see. That's not bad. I still prefer the plain salted chip to dip in that onion dip, but the barbecue potato chip tastes pretty good too. I've just got to have another regular one with this dip. So if you don't mind the little bit of extra effort that it takes to make this, take the time and seriously treat yourself. You will not be disappointed in the results you get making homemade chips and this dip.